Sansa wrote this.
It is your sister's hand, but the Queen's word.
That one short line, said by Maester Luwin in Winterfell, says everything. Sansa Stark wrote the letter, but the words came from Cersei Lannister. On the surface, that sounds like a story we already know. A scared girl forced to lie, with no real choice in the matter. For years, that's how fans have seen Sansa's role in the start of the War of the Five Kings. Innocent hostage, someone else's quill in her hand, a child the Lannisters used. But if you actually look closer, you will see that this reading doesn't make sense, because Sansa isn't Cersei in training. Fine, she didn't plan the war and she didn't write the words, but she isn't a puppet either. She walked to Cersei on her own, wrote the letter Cersei dictated, and didn't fight it. She forgot her own sister inside that same room. Most people saw a victim signing a confession, but what actually happened was that a young girl was choosing her dream of being queen over her father's life, and was refusing to admit that's what she was doing. Let me take you through it from the start, because once you see what the letter actually was, you can't unsee it. The dream she wouldn't let die. Season 1, Episode 6. Ned sits Sansa and Arya down in his chambers and tells them he's sending them home. King's Landing isn't safe, and the betrothal is off. Sansa's reaction is the master key to her whole arc.
I'm supposed to marry Prince Joffrey. I love him, and I'm meant to be his queen and have his babies.
It sounds like a child being a child, but it's more than that. Sansa has built her entire identity around becoming queen. The dress, the prince, the crown, the babies. She has rehearsed this future for years. Her own father has just told her, gently and plainly, that the man she's planning to marry isn't who she thinks he is. She doesn't believe her father, nor does she want to believe him. Believing him means her fantasy is over. Watch Arya in the same scene.
The lion's not a sigil, idiot. He's a stag like his father.
Arya is paying, and she sees what's in front of her. Remember, she saw the real Joffrey in action a few episodes earlier. So Sansa hears the truth from her sister and turns her face away from it. That difference, one sister who looks at reality, one who looks past it, shapes everything that happens to both of them for years to come. The letter, Episode 8. Sansa is brought into a small council chamber. Cersei dictates. Sansa writes, "Robb, I write to you with a heavy heart. Our good King Robert is dead, killed from wounds he took in a boar hunt. Father has been charged with treason. He conspired with Robert's brothers against my beloved Joffrey and tried to steal his throne. The Lannisters are treating me very well and provide me with every comfort. I beg you, come to King's Landing, swear fealty to King Joffrey, and prevent any strife between the great houses of Lannister and Stark." A first reading would lead you to believe this comes from a frightened girl, but look at what Sansa knows by the time the quill is in her hand. Her father has been charged with treason and locked in a cell. His men have been butchered in the throne room. Robert is dead. Joffrey, the beloved Joffrey of the letter, is the boy who ordered her father in chains. She has seen enough of Joffrey and his mother to know exactly what kind of court she's sitting in. The line about her beloved Joffrey isn't a girl who still believes in her prince. By this point, calling Joffrey beloved is an active piece of theatre. Cersei gave her the words, yes, but Sansa wrote them down. She didn't slip in a coded warning. She didn't refuse and demand to see her father. She wrote and she signed. This is the kind of going along with it that isn't plotting and isn't quite innocence. It's the choice of someone who would rather keep her dream alive than save her family. Faced with a room full of grown-ups telling her to write a lie, she found it easier to write the lie than to risk losing what she still hoped to become. Maester Luwin sees part of this when the letter arrives at Winterfell. It is your sister's hand, but the Queen's words. Robb sees the rest of it. Joffrey puts my father in chains. Now he wants his ass kissed. The court had already claimed her. People sometimes say Sansa was a Stark caught in the wrong court. That's true, and it's also a way of letting her off the hook. The Lannister court did not have to work especially hard to pull her away from her family. The values she'd already decided to care about most, princes, knights, songs, queenship, were already southern. Her imagination had moved into the Red Keep years before her body did. Grand Maester Pycelle, in his self-important way, mutters to Cersei,
"She's a sweet thing now, Your Grace, but in 10 years, who knows what treason she may hatch."
Pycelle worries Sansa might betray the Lannisters someday, but somehow he misses that the girl in front of him is, in this exact moment, helping the Lannisters trick her brother into a war.
No, I'm not. I'll be a good wife to him. You'll see.
The treason has already started. It's just running the other direction.
I'll be a queen just like you, I promise. I won't hatch anything.
The war, the letter, started. The Lannisters wanted one thing from the letter. They wanted Robb to ride south and bend the knee. Instead, the letter raised banners. Joffrey puts my father in chains. Now he wants his ass kissed? The lie was so obviously a lie that it did the opposite of its job. Rather than bend the knee, the North marched. It's no exaggeration to say that the letter ignited the War of the Five Kings. And then, Ned executed, Robb murdered at the Red Wedding, Catelyn dead beside him, Bran and Rickon scattered to the wind, Sansa stranded in King's Landing as a prisoner who used to be a guest. Sansa didn't plan any of it, but the letter she wrote was the match that lit the fuse. The story she tells herself. When something terrible happens that we helped cause, the temptation is to remember it slightly differently. Not a lie exactly, just a shifting of the emphasis. Emphasize what was done to us, rather than what we chose to do. Sansa does this. The letter becomes, they made me write it. The forgetting of Arya becomes, everything was happening so fast. All of that has truth in it. The Lannisters did coerce her. The room was full of grown adults pressuring a child. The threat to her father was real. But the part she leaves out is significant too. She went to Cersei because she wanted Cersei to overrule Ned. She cried instead of refusing because crying was easier. She forgot Arya because Arya wasn't on her mind. And the Sansa who eventually becomes Lady of Winterfell is built on top of the long, slow process of looking back at this period and finally admitting her earlier wrongdoing. What the letter doesn't say. There's something else worth noticing about the letter. Arya isn't in it, not mentioned at all. In the books, this is one of the most painful details in Sansa's whole arc. After she finishes writing the letters Cersei dictates, she goes to bed, and only then, drifting off to sleep, does she realize she forgot to ask about Arya. She didn't hide Arya on purpose. She didn't protect her with a clever omission. She just forgot her completely. That's not a defense of Sansa. If anything, it's worse. A girl who had spent the day fighting for her sister wouldn't forget. The forgetting tells you exactly where Sansa's mind was. Not on Arya, not on her father, on Joffrey, on Cersei, on her own future. And here's the strange part. The omission Sansa never planned ends up doing the work of a coded message anyway. When Catelyn reads the letter, she figures it out fast. This is Cersei's letter, not your sister's. The real message is in what Sansa does not say. Robb adds miserably, there's no mention of Arya. The gap that exposes Sansa's self-absorption is exactly what tips her family off that something is wrong. Sansa didn't send a coded signal, but her family read one anyway. That is the deepest layer of the trap. Cersei thought she was sending a summons. What she actually sent was a confession, written, signed, and addressed to the one woman in Westeros who knew her daughter well enough to read the empty spaces. The walk nobody talks about. Here is the part the show barely touches, but the books make much clearer. After Ned tells Sansa they're going home, nobody drags her to Cersei. Nobody marches her to the Queen. In the books, Sansa goes to Cersei of her own accord because she wants Cersei to overrule her father. She wants Cersei to fix this so she can stay in King's Landing and still marry Joffrey. What she gives Cersei is not some master file of Stark strategy. She doesn't know about Joffrey's parentage. She doesn't know Ned is preparing to move against the Queen. She isn't selling war plans. She is a girl tattling on her father to her future mother-in-law, because the wedding, the crown, and the fantasy still matter more to her than the danger she cannot see. But that one piece of information tells Cersei that Ned means to get his daughters out of King's Landing. And once the Lannisters move, Sansa and Arya are no longer just children, they are leverage. In the books, Cersei later tells Tyrion, if Sansa hadn't come to me and told me all her father's plans, Cersei is exaggerating. Sansa did not hand over all of Ned's plans, but strip away the boast, and the core is true. The visit was Sansa's idea. The footsteps were hers. The TV series leaves most of that walk off screen, but the emotional reality is still there. Sansa is not dragged into that mistake. She moves toward it, because the alternative, going home, losing Joffrey, losing the crown, is unbearable. The cage and the key. The Maester Luwin line works because it is true and incomplete. Yes, Sansa's hand wrote the letter. Yes, the Queen's words were on the page. But underneath the line is a third thing it doesn't name, that Sansa's hand wrote those words because Sansa, at 13, would rather be Cersei's tool than admit her dream was a lie. She is old enough to see the trap, young enough to still want what the trap is offering. Everything Sansa becomes after this, the cunning, the cold timing, the woman who eventually weaponizes the same court that used her, starts here. Not at her father's execution, not at her wedding to Tyrion, but here. It starts with the letter, the forgotten sister, and the difficult choice she didn't make. So the next time you watch the early Sansa scenes, don't see a victim. See a girl who wanted something so badly, she she let herself be used to get it. See a girl still loyal to a fantasy that's already costing her everything, and see the quiet, painful first step of the woman she'll become, measured precisely by how far she will one day have to walk back from this moment. If this changed how you see Sansa, drop a comment. Did you always think she had more responsibility for what happened than the show let on? Or has this flipped her arc for you? Let me know below.